Oedipus. The son of King Laius and Queen Jocasta of Thebes, Oedipus would face hardship from the very beginning of his life. His father, Laius, the city's sixth king, had consulted the oracle of Delphi about the future of his lineage. But the prophecy he received would not be to his liking, as it was foretold that he would die at the hands of his son. And so, when his first son was born, Laius would bind his feet, hanging the boy on the branch of a tree to die. But a shepherd would soon stumble across the helpless child, retrieving him from the tree and taking him home to safety. As the child's ankles had been damaged, he would name the infant Oedipus, meaning swollen foot. Wanting the best for the child, the shepherd would deliver Oedipus to the king and queen of Corinth, good people who could not conceive a child of their own. Oedipus would experience a happy upbringing in Corinth, but as he reached manhood, he would begin to wonder about his true parentage. Making his way to the oracle of Delphi, he would ask who his parents were. In reply, the oracle only warned him to stay away from his homeland, otherwise he was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Horrified by the prophecy, and believing that it referred to his foster parents, the king and queen of Corinth, Oedipus vowed to never again return to the city. Instead, he would travel to Thebes, which, unknown to Oedipus, was the true land of his birth. On the road to Thebes, Oedipus would come to a narrow junction, where a large chariot blocked his way. But the chariot's passenger, an impatient man, would speed past Oedipus, knocking him off the road while hitting him on the head with a stick. Furious, Oedipus would chase after the chariot, killing all those on board, including the elderly man who had struck him. Unknown to Oedipus, he had already begun to fulfill the prophecy, as the old man lying dead at his feet was none other than his true father, King Laius. Continuing his journey, Oedipus would reach the gates of Thebes, only to discover that the city was plagued by a monster, the Sphinx, sent there by Hera to punish the city for the crimes of its kings. With the head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of a bird, the Sphinx would ask anyone wishing to enter or leave the city a simple riddle. What animal has 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? None had yet solved the riddle, and those who failed would be killed and eaten by the Sphinx. The rulers of Thebes were so desperate to get rid of the creature that they offered the throne to anyone who could kill it. Approaching the monster, Oedipus would be asked the riddle, with the Sphinx eagerly waiting for yet another kill. But after thinking long and hard, Oedipus would finally give his answer: man. For in the morning, man is a child, crawling around on all 4s. Then, at noon, in the prime of his life, man walks on just 2 legs. And finally, in the evening of his life, man walks with the aid of a 3rd leg, a walking stick, to help him keep balance. Shocked by her defeat, the Sphinx would jump off a tall rock to her death, with Oedipus entering the city of Thebes as a hero. Being crowned king for ridding the city of the Sphinx, he would also be gifted the recently widowed Queen Jocasta as his wife, with the two having several children together. But, unknown to Oedipus, he had just married his own mother, with the prophecy now complete. The two would live together happily for a time, but it was not to last, with the gods casting a plague upon Thebes as punishment for the crimes of patricide and incest that Oedipus was still unaware he had committed. With the plague getting worse by the day, the shepherd that had saved Oedipus as a child would finally reveal to him his true identity. Horrified by the revelation that she had married her son, Queen Jocasta would hang herself, with Oedipus soon finding her body. Overcome by grief at the death of his mother and wife, Oedipus would take the golden brooches from her robe and blind himself with their sharp pins. Disgusted by the revelation of his identity, the people of Thebes would exile Oedipus, with only his daughter Antigone choosing to accompany him. Blind and poor, he would spend his remaining years wandering the land as a beggar, with all those he encountered hurling abuse at him for his crimes. The only comfort he received was knowing his daughter was by his side, with Oedipus dying an old man, having realized that no mortal can outrun their fate. His story would resonate throughout the ages, inspiring the works of Sigmund Freud, whose Oedipus complex would propose that every young boy would lust for their mother while feeling resentment towards their father, much as Oedipus had. But although the House of Cadmus was the first great heroic family, a new line of heroes would soon emerge. For there was another kingdom that sat between the great cities of Athens and Sparta, Argos, ruled by King Acrisius. But Acrisius had been informed of a terrible prophecy by the Oracle of Delphi, warning him that his grandson, soon to be born, was destined to murder him. It would not be long until Zeus, having seen the king's daughter, Danae, would be struck by her beauty, sneaking into her room as a shower of gold. With the gold falling upon her, Danae would fall pregnant, soon giving birth to a son she would name Perseus. But King Acrisius, terrified that the prophecy was coming true and not able to kill his daughter and grandchild, would banish them from his kingdom, locking them in a chest and letting it drift out to sea. Traveling for many days and nights at sea, they would soon arrive upon the shores of Seriphos, where they would be discovered by the fisherman Dictys. Dictys would raise the boy as his own, with Perseus soon reaching manhood on the island. But not all would be well, for the fisherman's brother, King Polydectes, had also noticed the beauty of Danae and desired her as his wife. But she was always protected by her son Perseus, who never left her side. Wanting to have Danae to himself, King Polydectes would look to find a way to get rid of Perseus, with an opportunity soon presenting itself. Hosting a great feast, Polydectes would invite guests from across the island, with each man expected to bring a horse in tribute. But Perseus, having no money to his name and possessing great speed and strength, instead boasted he could easily deliver the king a greater gift, the head of Medusa. It was the opportunity Polydectes had been waiting for, with him ordering Perseus to collect the head. Not expecting the king to take up his offer, Perseus would set out in despair, having only heard the terrifying tales of the creature that awaited him. Medusa. But Medusa had not always been a terrifying creature. The daughter of the sea gods Phorcys and Ceto, Medusa was one of 3 sisters, renowned for their unrivaled beauty. The only mortal sister, Medusa would also be the most beautiful, with any man that set eyes on her immediately falling in love. But despite this, Medusa would dedicate her life to Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, taking a vow of celibacy so she could serve as her priestess. However, one day while she was walking by the sea, the god Poseidon would be struck by her beauty, following her back to Athena's temple where he would force himself upon her. Furious at the act performed in her sacred temple and not able to turn her rage upon her powerful uncle Poseidon, Athena would instead place the blame upon Medusa for allowing herself to be defiled and breaking her vow of celibacy. Wielding the power of the gods, she would curse Medusa, distorting her once beautiful features into a hideous visage. Where her long and flowing hair had once been was now a tangled web of snakes, and where her eyes had once seduced any man would now turn those who looked upon them to stone. But Medusa's sisters who came to her defense would not escape Athena's wrath, with each of them transforming into hideous creatures, with the 3 sisters becoming known as the Gorgons. Exiled from their homeland, the 3 sisters would find a new home in North Africa, but their troubles would soon continue, as warriors from across the world would come to hunt them for sport. As the years went on and their loneliness continued, the hate they felt for the outside world would begin to grow, with Medusa and her sisters killing any who came near. The Gorgon's head. With Perseus having set out to slay Medusa, both Athena and Hermes would soon approach him offering aid, with Hermes gifting Perseus an indestructible sword and Athena giving him an exquisite shield, so polished that he could see his own reflection. Knowing he would need more items to defeat Medusa, Perseus would next seek the help of the nymphs, forest deities that tended to the garden of the Hesperides. Soon finding the nymphs, Perseus would ask for their assistance, with them gifting him a pair of winged sandals, Hades' hat of invisibility, and an enchanted bag which could safely contain Medusa's head. Following the nymphs' directions, he would use his winged sandals to fly to North Africa, where Medusa's cave was located. Sneaking into the cave, Perseus would soon come across Medusa, sleeping amongst the stone corpses of her victims. Using the reflection in his shield, Perseus was careful not to look at her directly, with her gaze able to turn any man to stone. Seeing only her reflection, he would draw his sword and swiftly cut off her head, being careful not to look at her eyes as he placed it inside the enchanted bag. But to Perseus's surprise, from Medusa's body would spring Pegasus, a beautiful winged horse, Poseido's child who had been growing inside her all this time. Mounting Pegasus, Perseus would fly out of the cave and begin the journey home to Greece. Andromeda. Soaring across the ocean, Perseus would look down at the waves below, shocked to see a woman chained to a rock. The woman was the beautiful Andromeda, princess of the kingdom of Ethiopia, who had been placed there as an offering to the gods, in the hopes that her sacrifice would save the kingdom from the terrifying sea creature Cetus, who had been ravaging the shore, killing all those it came across. Captivated by Andromeda's beauty, Perseus would approach her parents, the king and queen of Ethiopia, offering to slay the creature in return for Andromeda's hand in marriage. Relieved, they would quickly accept, with Perseus flying over the monster with his winged sandals, slashing it with his sword until the beast was dead. Returning Andromeda to the shore, the queen would honor her word, giving Perseus her blessing, with the two soon marrying. With his new bride in hand, the pair would mount Pegasus, flying back to the island of Seriphos, where Perseus' mother awaited. The prophecy fulfilled. But things were not as Perseus had left them. His mother Danae had continued to reject the advances of the king, but without Perseus there to protect her, she was forced into hiding. Having seen that King Polydectes had turned to violence to gain his mother as a bride, Perseus would fly down to the palace in anger, with the king's guards drawing their swords. Taking Medusa's head from his bag, Perseus would hold it out before him, turning the soldiers to stone. Panicking, the king ran for his spear, but it was too late, with Perseus holding Medusa's head before him, forever immortalizing his terrified expression in stone. Finally reunited, Danae would embrace her son, thankful that she would no longer have to live in fear. Leaving the island behind them, Perseus, Andromeda, and Danae would decide to return to Argos, the place of Perseus's birth, where his grandfather, Acrisius, still ruled as king. But before he left, Perseus would return his gifts to the gods, with Athena taking Medusa's severed head and placing it on her shield, a final punishment for her former priestess, with it remaining as a symbol of Athena's dominance and power. Returning to Argos, Perseus was hailed as a hero for slaying Medusa, with all the townspeople encouraging him to join a local athletics tournament where he could compete against some of the strongest men in Greece. With the event underway and Perseus dominating the competition, it would soon be his turn to throw the discus. Spinning with all his might, Perseus would forget his own strength, with the discus flying off into the crowd, killing a member of the audience. Running over to the body, he discovered that it was none other than his grandfather, King Acrisius, laying dead on the floor, the discus having struck him on the head. And so, just as the prophecy had predicted so many years ago, King Acrisius had died at the hands of his grandson, a lesson that no mortal can run from their fate. But having shed the blood of a family member, something that was deeply frowned upon and considered one of the worst crimes in ancient Greek society, Perseus was no longer able to stay in Argos. Instead, he would found his own kingdom, Mycenae, north of Argos and west of Athens, which would soon become the most powerful city in Greece. Its great walls were constructed with massive boulders, too large for any man to lift alone, with Perseus enlisting the help of the mighty Cyclops, whose craftsmanship was unrivaled. Ruling over the city, Perseus and Andromeda would have many children together, with their family's reign lasting for generations to come. But unknown to them, one of their descendants would become the most famous hero of them all. For the son of Zeus and Alcmene would be the great hero Heracles, whose famous 12 labors would echo throughout every corner of the world.